Hi, this is Hatim Kheir, counsel for the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, and this is the video update for Day 14 of the Public Order Emergency Commission. So today was a big day. We heard from 3 witnesses, all protesters involved with the convoy in Ottawa. We heard from Chris Barber, Bridget Belton, and Steve Sharland. So I'm just going to note at the outset, I'm not going to talk about Mr. Sharland's evidence because I didn't catch it, so don't read anything into that. I had to step out for another matter. So starting with Chris Barber, who gave his testimony in the morning, some of the focus areas for Mr. Barber's evidence were how exactly the convoy got started, his relationship to some of the other big names in the movement, and what exactly his purpose is, and what happened when he got to Ottawa. So Barber testified that the movement started when he came into contact with Bridget Belton, and at first it was just talks about doing slow rolls to protest vaccine mandates. And he explained how the mandates had impacted him, his family, and his business, and why that motivated him to get involved. He explained that himself, Tamara Leach, Bridget Belton, James Bowder, and Patrick King were the most involved at the beginning. And he described how there were various factions involved in getting this organized. He made a point to state that, given that there were, this was a movement based around truckers, that there's often difficulty getting truckers to work together, and so there were a lot of different personalities involved. He was asked questions about his understanding of the Memorandum of Understanding before into January 2022, and he explained that he had never actually read the document, and he said, quote, "I believe I ignored it. I wasn't into that sort of thing," end quote. For Chris Barber, this was about ending the mandates, and it was a protest against the vaccine mandates. And he testified that he wasn't aware of anyone else having a separate motive at the beginning. But he did say that as it traveled, he became aware of groups that wanted something more than that, and that there were other organizations that came in. He described a power struggle. Of note, Chris Barber explained what happened when the convoy actually got to Ottawa, and he says that on the way in, his understanding was that there were 2 staging zones that police had designated, Major Hill Park and Confederation Park. But when he arrived, he was directed to Wellington Street, and then after he got there, police stopped him, and then they blockaded, and his truck ended up staying on Wellington Street. So he explained that was never actually the plan coming in. He did also state in his evidence that he had no contact with the people from Windsor and the protest that was happening there. He also explained, and a lot of this came out in cross-examination by the CCLA as well, that his bank accounts were frozen. He explained that they were frozen on February 17th, and that his corporate accounts were unfrozen the next Monday, but he had one account that was frozen for 3.5 months. Turning to Bridget Belton's evidence, if you watched the hearing, you'll see that there was a lot going on, but the things I wanted to focus on was Bridget's explanation of the motivation that brought her to protest. She explained the frustration and the impact that various COVID mandates had on her, and then ultimately the mandate applying the vaccine mandate at the border to truckers, which would have resulted in the loss of her livelihood. She described that the plan was originally to do a slow roll. She said that the plan was to be a nuisance, but to be within their legal rights to protest. With respect to the Memorandum of Understanding, she did say that she signed it, out of a sense of support, but she never actually read the full document. And she explained that from her position, she understood that each truck driver was his own leader, and that they should each all make their own individual decisions. She was asked about her connection to the Windsor protests, and she explained that she didn't talk to anyone directly involved. At one point, someone from a company called ADT Canada called and asked if the Windsor border should be blocked, and she said, "No way, continue to slow roll." She also explained how her bank accounts were frozen and the impact it had on her. She explained how, as both her and her husband are truck drivers and they're away from home a lot, they have to coordinate between themselves to make sure that bills get paid, for example, and that it's important to have a joint account where they both have access to the money. And so by freezing all the accounts that her name was on, that left them with only her husband's one personal account that made paying bills and paying for groceries very difficult. Like Barber, Belton was specific in saying that the goal of the protest was to end mandates. And a theme that came out in her testimony was that it was about being heard. She had felt that she was unheard for 2 years, and this was now an opportunity to be heard. Now that's the just a factual summary. Just as a brief bit of commentary, this is my opinion, so take it as you will. But one thing that really came out from both Ms. Belton and Mr. Barber's evidence was, well, I'd say a couple of big points. One was that for them, this was about the mandates. It was about, while there was frustration around COVID rules more generally that perhaps led up to this, there was an emphasis that this was about the mandates, and what they were looking for was to be heard by the federal government. Another interesting point that came out is just exactly how the trucks ended up on Wellington Street. That was never their original plan. That was not their intention. Chris Barber explained how they were in touch with police, in touch with the various local police their whole way across Canada, and that as they approached Ottawa, they were in touch with the Ottawa Police Service. And right up until their arrival, their expectation was that they would be going to these two parks where there would be staging areas for them, only at kind of at the very end there to realize that they had been led to Wellington Street, and then they weren't able to move their trucks, or the big trucks weren't able to leave. Bridget Belton explained that she had a pickup truck. She was able to turn it around and leave. So that really does shed some light on what the motives were in terms of the circumstances that led to the convoy, and then ultimately the declaration of emergency, which is one of the main goals of the commission. So with that said, I will be back for another video update tomorrow. Thanks.